Managing a single chronic illness is already a full-time job, but when you're dealing with 2, 3, or even more, the challenges seem to multiply exponentially. It's not just about juggling symptoms, it's about medications that interact, doctors who don't talk to each other, and treatments that sometimes help one condition but make another worse. Today, I want to talk about what it's really like to manage multiple chronic illnesses and share some of my own struggles, frustrations, and hard-won lessons. If this sounds familiar, know you're not alone. Hi, I'm Daniela, and you're watching Through the Looking Glass, where we foster resilience and inspire lives. Let's dive into it, shall we? Medications. Let's start with medications. When you have multiple chronic conditions, chances are you're taking several medications. Managing prescriptions becomes a challenge in itself. Each specialist seems to add another medication to the list, and then there are medications to deal with the side effects of the other medications. It never ends. And then, of course, there are supplements. Before you know, your bedside table looks like a pharmacy. Making sure that you don't run out of medications, renewing prescriptions, picking them up from the pharmacy, and of course, they all renew at different dates, becomes a full-time job in itself. Also, when you're taking several medications, there is a high risk of interactions. Sometimes one medication clashes with another and you are the one that has to catch it. Then, of course, there is all the blood work that goes with it to make sure that your liver and your kidneys are handling all these drugs. It never ends. What helps me is using a medication and symptoms tracker to keep everything organized. I log doses, times, and any side effects. But even with all the tools, there is no escaping the mental load of managing it all. Specialists. Now, let's talk about specialists. Each condition usually has its own doctor. I have a rheumatologist, a neurologist, a cardiologist. Actually, I have 3 cardiologists, a immunologist, a gynecologist, the list goes on. They are all focused on their own specialty, and it often feels no one is looking at the bigger picture. The human body is not made of separate, disconnected organs. They're all systems that work together and depend on each other. We're not going to go anywhere unless we start looking at the whole body as one interconnected being. We can go even further and talk about how our body is connected to our environment. It is all very complex, and there is no doubt to me that taking a holistic approach is the best approach. Then there is the time and cost of all of these appointments. The driving, the parking fees, the waiting rooms, it adds up. And let's be honest, wait times alone can be exhausting. Sometimes it feels like I'm spending more time managing appointments and waiting in waiting rooms than actually focusing on healing. One thing that I've started doing is keeping a master health record. I bring copies of it to every appointment. It doesn't solve all the problems, but it really helps me feel a little bit more in control. Flares. Now, if you live with a chronic illness, you know how unpredictable flares can be. Now, imagine dealing with multiple conditions flaring up all at once. It's like a domino effect. One triggers another, and suddenly you're battling a full body storm. For me, one thing that often flares everything at once is viruses. If I get sick, it's guaranteed everything is going to flare. The first thing to flare is usually the fibromyalgia, which then makes me stay in bed a lot, and that makes the spondylitis and the POTS worse because I'm not moving much, so I get super stiff. And then because of the pain, I don't sleep. And then before you know it, I am dealing with migraines as well. It's overwhelming, and it feels like no amount of preparation can truly get you through it. What's helped me during flares is focusing on basic self-care. Hydrating, resting, and keeping things simple. But let's be honest, some days all you can do is just write it out and wait for your body to calm down. Treatments. If you've been diagnosed with a chronic illness, you most likely have been offered some sort of treatment at some point. Treatments are another layer of complexity. When you're managing multiple chronic conditions, what works for one might make another worse. For example, I have done ketamine infusions that have helped with the fibromyalgia, but has made my migraine so much worse. or physio that helps with my back pain and POTS, but leaves me completely wiped out for days because of the chronic fatigue. There's also the trial and error process of finding what works. It can take months or sometimes years to figure out which treatments help and which aren't worth the effort. And during that time, you're spending energy, money, and emotional bandwidth on something that may not even work. I've learned to ask a lot of questions before starting a new treatment. What are the risks? How might this affect my other conditions? And most importantly, how are we going to measure whether this is working or not? It's about being as informed as possible, even when the answers aren't clear. I have recently said no to a treatment that was offered to me at the pain clinic because I judged it not to be worth it. And the doctor completely agreed with me. They just really need to offer you everything. Coping strategies. With all that said, how do we cope? The truth is, there's no magic answer, but there are things that help. For me, it's about finding tools and strategies that make the load a little lighter. I use health tracking apps to stay organized. I've learned to delegate tasks and ask for help when I need it. And I've started pacing myself better, breaking tasks into smaller steps and giving myself permission to rest. Advocating for yourself is also key. It's not easy, but asking questions, pushing for answers, and speaking up when something doesn't feel right can make a big difference. And above all, I try to hold on to hope. Yes, it is hard. Yes, it is overwhelming, but there's strength in learning to navigate this journey. You're so much more than your illnesses, and even on the hardest days, you're doing the best you can, and that is enough. If you're managing multiple chronic illnesses, I hope this video reminds you that you're not alone. We're all in this together, and sharing our stories help us feel a little less alone. What challenges do you face managing multiple chronic illnesses? What has helped you cope? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Also, for those of you who'd like to support my work here on YouTube, I've started a Buy Me a Coffee page. That's a platform that allows people to give like a once-off donation to their favorite creators. And so if you're in a position and you'd like to support me, I will leave the link in the description below. That is it for now, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.